You want hot takes? No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true. Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that. To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished. Getting better. 1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them. There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Wednesday, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Man, oh man, we got a lot to dive into today. I do think everyone needs to calm down. Y'all need to settle down. Y'all need to relax. I feel like more of you are more concerned about Ohio State losing Brian Hartline than when Ohio State lost Urban Meyer. And I got to tell you, Brian Hartline is no Urban Meyer. And Brian Hartline is sure as hell ain't no Ryan Day. We all need to calm down. I think today's probably one of the most overreactive days in regards to a Buckeye headline that I could think of in quite some time. I mean, it is not ideal that the Buckeyes are losing Brian Hartline at the end of this season. For those of you who live under a rock and don't know, Ohio State offensive coordinator Brian Hartline has been named the new head coach at South Florida. Hartline agreed to a 6-year deal, and the expectation is that Hartline is going to remain with Ohio State for the remainder of the postseason, according to ESPN and Ryan Day and everyone else out there. Look, Brian Hartline released in a statement saying that becoming a first-time head coach at a place like USF is a dream come true for me and my family. I look forward to leading the team to new heights, both on and off the field. Look, Brian Hartline, who's been very picky about opportunities that have been presented to him in recent years. He's had a lot of smaller program offers, or at least interviews in recent seasons. You see, he was linked to them, the Bearcats, a few years ago, but ultimately turned it down. And the thing that's interesting is when we started hearing the possibilities of Brian Hartline leaving Ohio State to take a head coaching gig, I think, Penn State was a name that was being mentioned a lot. There was a lot of momentum towards Brian Hartline, or linking Brian Hartline to Penn State. And I thought that would be a win for Penn State. They would win the press conference, but ultimately you don't know anything about Brian Hartline outside of the fact that he's really good at developing wide receivers. Oh, but he's a really good recruiter. He's really good at recruiting a position that is very in need of what Ohio State offers. I'm not saying Brian Hartline's not good at his job. I'm not saying that it's not a major loss for Ohio State, but this is also a program that just lost after winning a national championship, lost its offensive coordinator and its defensive coordinator, and was better this year. There was no learning curve. You know what I mean? There was no bumps along the way to adjusting to Patricia as defensive coordinator. You know what I mean? Like, there was no learning curve for moving on from Chip Kelly. Like that, I don't understand why we're acting like losing Brian Hartline is this massive deal. It is not ideal, but it is not the end of the world. It is not the end of the world. I think that, look, you look at what Brian Hartline has done. Brian Hartline leaving does what to Ohio State? Oh, but he was great at getting the wide receivers. So you think that wide receivers are just going to stop coming to Ohio State? Why do you think wide receivers like coming to Ohio State? Think about this. Is it all Brian Hartline, or is it Ryan Day's offense? Is it the fact that you're going to get a ton of money in NIL? Is it the fact that it is the Ohio State University? Is it the fact that you're going to have, no matter who, the best quarterbacks in the country throwing you the football year in and year out? You're going to be complemented by the best running backs year in and year out. And now, as Ohio State has wasted some of these receivers in recent years because they haven't been fine-tuned on the defense, now the defense seems to be figured out, and this is just a well-oiled machine moving forward. You mean to tell me, with all the elite QBs that come to Ohio State and the NFL pro-style offense that Ryan Day leads, and the NIL opportunities and the fact that it is the Ohio State University, one of the biggest, if not the biggest brand in all of college football, you mean to tell me that Brian Hartline is the linchpin in all of this? Are you kidding? Stop overreacting. I am not like when I read it, I was like, good for Brian Hartline. And then I moved on. I went on with my day like an adult. I didn't sit there and cry and hold a eulogy for the loss of Brian Hartline in Columbus. You know what's going to happen? Chip Kelly, probably. You're just going to go get Chip Kelly. You're going to put him back in that seat. And Chip Kelly, who led you to a national championship last year, will come back and put this team in position to maybe win the third straight national championship next year if they get it done this year as well. Guys, relax. It's not ideal. It's not the end of the world. We got to chill out. 937-518-1410 on YouTube. On YouTube, he's a damn good recruiter. Wouldn't say it's not a big deal, Kenner. Again, he is a good recruiter, but I think it's easy to recruit. Like, if you're Brian Hartline and you're going out to talk to the biggest names, and if you're going to go talk to the best wide receivers in the country, I think it's pretty easy to sell Ohio State if you're Brian Hartline. You're selling the number one program in the country. It's easy. Hey, you're the best wide receiver in this class, and we have the best quarterbacks, and we have the best running backs, and we have a head coach that all he does is put wide receivers and quarterbacks in the NFL. You want to come play here? Yeah, where do I sign? Okay, cool. And then we all move on with our days. Guys, he's a good recruiter. And guess what? Whoever replaces him, they're going to be good recruiters. And whoever replaces that guy, they're going to be good recruiters. Ohio State doesn't rebuild. They reload every year. I'm not excited about losing Brian Hartline. I'm just not concerned about it. I know that sounds weird, but it's going to be fine. Ohio State lost Jim Tressel. You got Urban Meyer. You lost Urban Meyer. You got Ryan Day. And those are head coaches. Ohio State's lost good coordinators. And the wheel keeps spinning. Like, and Andy, shout out to the Big Ten commissioner. He gets it. Hartline is not bigger than, he's not bigger than the brand. Exactly. Like, this is, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but good for Brian Hartline, who took advantage of an opportunity that presented itself during the Zach Smith debacle back in the day. Brian Hartline comes in as a grad assistant, former Buckeye, played in the NFL. He checks off every box that proud alums of Ohio State can feel good about. But I saw a lot of people today, too, say, he's the head coach in waiting for Ohio State. Ryan Day's in his 30s or 40s. Like, Ryan Day's not going anywhere anytime soon. You think he's going to wait around for 20 years if Ryan Day's here that long? Like, Ryan Day's not going anywhere anytime soon. Ohio State's not going anywhere anytime soon. And that's a lot of hype for a guy that has only been an offensive coordinator for not even a full calendar year yet. I love Brian Hartline. I wish him the best at USF, but I'm not going to sit here and say that all of Ohio State's success was because of a wide receivers coach. That sounds ridiculous. Guys, relax. Be happy for him. I am. Move on. I mean, today on social media, you would have thought that Ryan Day announced he's leaving to take another job elsewhere. By the way, I've talked about this with Keith Byers. I've talked about this with Bobby Carpenter. I've talked about this with a lot of former Buckeyes. And this isn't a shot at Hartline. I've always found it strange. I've never seen an assistant coach get more credit for recruiting wins over the head coach. Like when no matter like Lane Kiffin, no matter who it was, they'd recruit some of the best players in the country. But it was Alabama. It was Nick Saban, lands another one. At Georgia, Kirby Smart lands another one. At Clemson, back when they were at good, Dabo lands another one. Marcus Freeman lands another one. But in Ohio State, it's, oh man, look, Brian Hartline gets another one. No, Ryan Day. It's Ryan Day's offense, Ryan Day's quarterbacks, Ryan Day's running backs, Ryan Day's wide receivers, Ryan Day's program, not Brian Hartline's program. Let Brian Hartline go create a path for himself over at USF. But for those of you out there that said, man, he's a big-time recruiter, that's a problem, it's easy to recruit at Ohio State. There's not one need. Every need that a receiver needs out on the recruiting trail, Ohio State can provide. Can USF do that? Every dollar that a top wide receiver recruit needs, Ohio State has. Every elite quarterback that you can imagine playing with, Ohio State has. Complementary run game with as elite running backs as wide receivers, Ohio State has that. A national championship winning head coach? Ohio State has that. National championship pedigree as a program? Ohio State has that. If Brian Hartline can go to USF and get the Jeremiah Smiths of the world to go there, now you could talk to me. But don't sit there and tell me that Brian Hartline is the reason that all this talent's coming to Ohio State when talent's been coming to Ohio State before Brian Hartline. And talent's going to keep coming to Ohio State after Brian Hartline. We'll see what happens. Now, Andy says, now leaving on signing day is not ideal. That I agree with. But it's also, I do think it's Ryan Day just kind of being upfront and honest with these recruits. You don't want to get off to a bad start with like Chris Henry and some of these guys too. I know there's some questions about whether Chris Henry, who hasn't turned in his paperwork yet. But like you also don't want to like get them all to sign ink to paper. And then, oh, by the way, guys, I'm leaving. Whoa, what the heck, coach? You weren't honest and upfront with me. Ohio State's an honest program, not like those scumbags up north who cut out the communication and the power on the sideline to keep Ryan Day from talking to his quarterback or come up with this cheating, elaborate scheme to steal sides because they're not good enough to beat Ohio State on their own. I mean, Ohio State's they're a respectful program. They do it the right way. And because they do it the right way and because they do things the right way across the board, this is why I'm not concerned about Brian Hartline leaving. I was amazed today on social media. You would have thought. I mean, I remember when Nick Saban announced his retirement, the way Alabama fans acted, that's the way you Buckeye fans acted today about a wide receiver coach. Relax. Relax. Stop acting like Brian Hartline was the only good reason for receivers to come to Ohio State. No, it's the offense of which these receivers play in, which is Ryan Day's offense. It's the quarterbacks throwing him the football, which is the quarterbacks that Ryan Day gets. It's the complementary run game provided by the best running backs in the country that are Ryan Day's running backs, all in Ryan Day's offense. The offense is there. The QBs are there. The running backs are there. The offensive line is going to be there. And the receivers will continue to be there. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. I get it. I'm being a little aggressive. I'll dial it back. But I got to say, I respect Brian Hartline, and it sounds like I don't with as aggressive as I'm coming off. But I've just been in so many arguments today where people are acting like it's the end of the world that I can't believe this is not good. This is devastating. I'm like, don't you think that's pouring it on a little thick? It's like I said, that's been my theme all day. Losing Brian Hartline, it's not ideal, but it's definitely not the end of the world. It's definitely not the end of the world. That's for dang sure. 937-518-1410. Is this a bigger deal than I'm making it out to be that the Buckeyes are losing Brian Hartline? What am I missing? Why is this such a big deal to so many of you? Why are you concerned about the Buckeyes moving forward without Brian Hartline? We'll get to all of that when we return. 937-518-1410. We'll take your calls when we come back.
Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
Justin Kinner back with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, 937-518-1410. We're going to get into some Reds talk coming up around the corner. So the Reds, I mean, man, it sounds like they're in on Kyle Shwarber. All right, now I don't know what being in on Kyle Shwarber means, but they're a lot further in this than what I actually thought they would be. And I really hope what the Reds aren't doing is just doing enough to cover their arse. This happens in recruiting in college athletics a lot. I've heard the story of, back in the day with Dayton and Ron Harper. Ron Harper's been in the studio before, and he shared the story of he was insulted by Don Donaher and company back in the day because, it was announced that Miami of Ohio was going to come out and announce that Ron Harper was going to, commit to Miami. And because Dayton didn't want to get crushed in the headlines, they sent the coaching staff out to Ron Harper just to say that, hey, we put in a final pitch. We tried to get him, but he ultimately picked Miami of Ohio. And he actually had a bigger problem with that. He was more offended by the last minute recruiting effort. And recruiting, I'm saying loosely, he was more offended that they tried to do the dog and pony show of sending the staff out there to talk to him, to make him feel like they were interested. Once Dayton knew that he was going to commit there, then according to Ron Harper, then that's when they sent the staff out there so that when it did come out in the paper that Harper committed to Miami, hey, wait a minute. How come Dayton didn't even try to get him? Oh, well, they did. But ultimately, they went in a different direction. It's just to cover your behind. So what I hope is not happening is something similar to that. What I hope is it's not the Reds just having conversations and talking with him just so that when he does sign with the Phillies or the Red Sox or elsewhere, then they could say, guys, we tried. We tried, and it just didn't work out. That's what I hope isn't happening here. I hope that the Reds are actually giving a damn here and trying. We'll talk more about that coming up here in a little bit. We're Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. We're also Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball, and we will have Wright State coming up later on tonight, 6:30. Chris Collins and Jim Brown are on the road with the Raiders, and Wright State's at Youngstown State tonight. 6:30, the tip-off. We'll have coverage beginning at 6:15. You'll hear from Clint Sargent, head coach of the Raiders, and during the coach's comments, and that's all the build to tip off at 6:30. That's coming up later on tonight. So picking up where we left off, Buckeyes in the news for a lot of reasons. And look, not ideal, as I mentioned. The day started with news that Brian Hartline is going to leave Ohio State after the playoffs, and he was named the head coach at South Florida. He signed a 6-year deal. He's going to remain with Ohio State through the playoff. That was confirmed by Ryan Day earlier today. Brian Hartline's 38 years old. Okay, I'm 36. He's a couple years older than I am. All right, former receiver at Ohio State. 7-year career in the NFL. He played with Miami. He played with Cleveland. Then he started his coaching career, eventually working his way up to the role of offensive coordinator and play caller, wink, wink, with, the top-ranked Buckeyes. And this is my point about all of this. Just because it's Ohio State and you have a lot of talent, it doesn't mean that it's dummy-proof and that you can't mess it up. So I'm not going to sit here and act like, there was no chance for him to fail. But it's a lot easier to succeed when you're at Ohio State and you have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to resources. Everyone out there acting as if it's the end of the world that Ohio State is losing Brian Hartline, I think that's a massive overreaction. It's not ideal. It's not the end of the world. All right. He's known for being one of the country's top recruiters of wide receivers. Obviously, he was a wide receivers coach for the longest time. He's developed 5 first-round picks. Since 2022? 5 first-round picks just in that stretch alone. And, Hartline and Ohio State, they boast what's regarded as the country's top crop of wide receivers this season. No doubt, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. And you think about the receivers that he has recruited and developed. Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson. All picked in the top 20 in the NFL. He helped develop Jamison Williams, who would go on to Alabama, and now, of course, having a very fine career in Detroit with the Lions. Obviously receivers who are doing their thing in the NFL right now who played, for him, Terry McLaurin, Paris Campbell, KJ Hill. The list goes on and on. But I do have to ask, all right, how many of those wide receivers came to Ohio State, not Brian Hartline playing a role in it, but for Brian Hartline exclusively? I would not have come to Ohio State if it wasn't for Brian Hartline. I don't think you could say that. That's no disrespect to Brian Hartline, but I just think that's a little over the top to say that. It's Ohio State. NIL, you get paid a lot of money. You're playing in a pro-style offense. You're playing in Ryan Day's offense that puts quarterbacks in the NFL, that puts running backs in the NFL, that puts wide receivers and offensive linemen in the NFL. You know, that's what I'm saying is like this stuff's getting a little ridiculous. Like I think I think it's because Brian Hartline was a former Buckeye, had success in the NFL, came in as a grad assistant, worked his way up. He's a feel-good story, so people love that. But I think, and this sounds like I'm poo-pooing on it, but I think he gets way too much credit for the influx of wide receivers. Think back to Ohio State's offense has never been bad, but you guys got to admit that during the Urban era, you had a lot of the RPOs. You had a lot of that kind of that offensive style that was starting to get outdated a bit. That's why you had your gimmicky quarterbacks, like you had your JT Barretts. I mean, we love Braxton Miller, but Braxton Miller, I mean, even, Terrell Pryor, a lot of the strengths that he brought to the table, yes, it was because of his arm, but a lot of that stuff too was a result of, and it wasn't just Urban, it was Tressel's offense too. It was just that old school offensive approach. It was starting to get outdated. Then Ryan Day comes along and they totally changed the offense. They opened it up. They started to become more alluring to some of the top quarterbacks in the country. And we started to see that, man, when Ryan Day got to put a little bit more of his thumbprint on the offense of Urban Meyer, it started to look different. It opened up. The best thing that ever happened, and I'm not celebrating a player's injury, but I honestly think that the best thing that ever happened to Ohio State was the JT Barrett injury back in against Michigan before they would go on to blow out Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game en route to winning the inaugural 14 college football playoff national championship. Because we got to see what Ryan Day's offense with an explosive arm and all the athletes at wide receiver really look like, Michael Thomas and all those guys. And I'm not saying you didn't see it before. You just didn't see as much of it with such an outdated offensive approach. And it wasn't hard to watch by any means, but it wasn't the same thing. Cardale opens it up. Dwayne Haskins throwing it all over the field. Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. I mean, Will Howard comes in, and once he got acclimated and comfortable, throwing it all over the place. We've watched the progression of Julian Sayin, who is, as he's gotten more comfortable, I mean, we just talked about it. He completed a pass to 6 different wide receivers in the win against Michigan this past Saturday. 6 different receivers caught at least 2 passes. It's not, we could sit there and say he has Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, but 6 different pass catchers caught at least 2 passes from Julian Sayin this past Saturday. It's an open-ended offense. Everyone gets to play. Everyone gets involved. So this idea that this offense was just lifeless, and then here comes Brian Hartline and wide receivers were just lining up to come here, that is ignorant thinking. That is not what happened. That's not what happened at all. And wide receivers are not going to disappear moving forward because Brian Hartline's leaving. That's not going to happen. Is this ideal? No. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. I'm going to continue saying it. Now, I had someone, so by the way, 937-518-1410, someone texted into the show and just said, oh yeah, Kenner, well, what's your excuse for why Legend Bay all of a sudden decommitted from Ohio State and flipped to Tennessee? He's the 4-star, he's a 4-star wide receiver. Legend Bay is his name. He flipped his commitment from Ohio State to Tennessee, and this was announced a little over an hour ago. Well, this is why you got to follow the recruiting stories of these kids, because there was a lot that was coming out. And by the way, this was probably going to happen whether he was leaving or not, by the way. Whether Brian Hartline takes the USF job or not, this kid was about to flip anyways because his mom refused to sign the paper. This is why you got to pay attention to the details. So you thought you had your gotcha moment, but this kid At his ceremony, he was decked out in all Ohio State gear. He had mentioned in multiple interviews he wanted to be a Buckeye. And allegedly, the mom is not going to sign any of the paperwork because she wanted him to go to Tennessee. And it's like, come on. And by the way, you're not going to get every wide receiver in the country because some kids don't want to go to Ohio State because of all the wide receiver talent, because if they go somewhere else where there's not as much, they could be the guy over there. Some guys don't want to come and be the second or third best wide receiver. They want to be the man right off the bat. The bottom line is there will be wide receivers, whether it be the portal or out of high school, 4 and 5s, the most productive wide receivers you can imagine in the portal. Guys will be lining up to come play in Ryan Day's offense. It's as simple as that. No shade at Brian Hartline whatsoever. But I am not going to sit here and act like he is responsible for every single piece of success that this team has had. That is not the case. It's Ryan Day's offense. It's Ryan Day's success. And that success will continue with or without Brian Hartline. Simple as that. 937-518-1410. I threw it out there. Concerns about this. What are your concerns? As we got on YouTube earlier, he's a damn good recruiter. Wouldn't just say it's not a big deal, Kenner. It's not a big deal. If you're at Ohio State, you're already a good recruiter. I could go to Ohio State and go recruit wide receivers because all I got to go do is sit across from these wide receivers and say, hey, how much money you want? All right, cool. Hey, these are the only questions I'm going to ask. You want to go to the NFL, right? Cool. You want to play with an elite quarterback, right? Yeah, cool. You want to play for national championship winning head coach? Best offense in the country every year, right? Yeah. All right, how much money you want? All right, I got that for you too. Okay, here, sign here. Bam! I'm a hell of a recruiter too. Now you go to USF. What's USF's story that when you're out on the recruiting trail, Brian Hartline is sitting down with Jeremiah Smith 2.0 and Justin Kinner. Loser Justin Kinner sits down with Jeremiah Smith 2.0. You may like Brian Hartline more than me, but Brian Hartline's not going to be able to give you more and give you a better opportunity at USF than what I can at Ohio State. I'm going to give you more money. I'm going to give you the best quarterbacks in the country. I'm going to give you the best offense in the country, the best coach in the country, and the best program in the country. Please tell me more about what Brian Hartline at USF is going to do for you. Well, he's going to develop you. Okay, cool. He will. He's great at that. So will Ohio State. You can have your cake and eat it too. This isn't hard. This is not a big deal. It's really not. You lost a wide receiver coach and a makeshift offensive coordinator. This is Ryan Day's offense. Ryan Day's just going to find someone else to call his offense, and this train will keep on moving. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll be right back.
When you think of the most exciting team in Dayton, it's okay if you don't think of the doctors and therapists at Premier Health. We don't have jerseys or trading cards. We don't get primetime coverage. We don't sell out arenas, have good drip, or autograph sessions. We're just happy to be your team's favorite team.
It's never too early to start making lunch plans. Head on over to your local.
together. Learn how you can improve your life at adventknows.com.
All right, and we are back. I'm Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio. Okay, so, by the way, for those who watch on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, for whatever reason, the platform we use did not send it to that today, so I shared it from ESPN Dayton's page. You should be able to jump in and watch it there. But Adam Seldner on Facebook regarding Brian Hartline and Brian Hartline's departure, which, as you guys know, I don't think is as big a deal as what you guys are making it out to be. There's, before I read his comment, I thoroughly believe this. It's not ideal, but I don't think Ohio State's in a worse off spot. Like, I think it's Ohio State. Every coach you hire has a great, like, you're expected to be great. And Ryan Day has done a phenomenal job with his coordinators in recent years. I mean, you moved on, you won a national championship with Jim Knowles, you moved on and you upgraded. You won a national championship with Chip Kelly, and obviously you just moved Brian Hartline into that spot. But ultimately, I think what we're learning is Chip Kelly's a great mind, but Chip Kelly's calling Ryan Day's offense. And guess what Brian Hartline was calling? Ryan Day's offense. Like, Ryan Day's still there. Ryan Day is the straw that stirs all of this. We're just not used to giving this man credit because we've spent the last 4 years trying to convince everybody that he needs to go and we need to get Ryan Day or, a Tressel type coach back ASAP. Well, guess what? Now all he does is win. All he does is win championships now. Now he beats Michigan. There's nothing else to complain about. It's Ryan Day's team, not Brian Hartline's. Never was, never will be. It's Ryan Day's team. Not a big deal in my opinion. So where do they go from here? Now, Adam Seldner says, not sure if you've talked about this already, but the thoughts on Chip Kelly coming back after his brief stink with the Raiders. Well, I'm fine with Chip Kelly coming back. But I also think there's a lot of schools out there who are striking out, swinging and missing in their coaching search. I think we're going to see Chip Kelly coach again in the Big Ten next year, and I don't think it's going to be as OC for Ohio State. And if he is, I think that's fine. I mean, can you imagine Patricia as defensive coordinator and Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator? Give me a break. To elite NFL and coaching and college minds right there. The train just keeps moving. You're fine. I think where Chip Kelly ends up is Penn State. I think that Penn State, I think they look bad today. I'm surprised that Brian Hartline I think USF is a safer job. I think you can go to USF and not succeed. And there's still going to be a lot of schools who are interested in you because they're understanding of the limitations there. I think when you go to Penn State, if you go there and you swing and miss, I think that's a big dent in the perception of who you are. So I really think, I don't know. I don't know what would have been the better move for Brian Hartline, Penn State or USF. The USF thing seems safe to me. Brian Hartline can go somewhere and he's not expected to be great right away, which he should be. According to Buckeye fans, they're going to get, 75 five-star wide receivers lining up to go to South Florida, according to you guys. That's not going to happen because it's USF. All the talent in the world is going to line up to go to Ohio State because it's Ohio State, and it wasn't because of Brian Hartline. Like, we got to get that through our heads. Like, this isn't that difficult. But I think, to me, going to USF is it's safer. You can go lose for a couple years. You'll have time to coach through it. I'm surprised. Like I said, I thought if he was going to leave Ohio State, I thought Penn State would be a pretty cool opportunity for him. I'm surprised he didn't take it. Adam Seldner said, are we sure Matt Patricia wouldn't take a college head coaching job if he's offered? He very well might take it. Absolutely. And I'll say the same thing, like, next. I love Matt Patricia, by the way. Love Chip Kelly. I love Brian Hartline. But I don't think that there's one coordinator that this program can't afford to lose. I don't think that there's one coordinator that this program can't afford to lose. Because I'll say the same thing about Patricia that I said about Hartline. It's not ideal to lose Patricia because the defense has been phenomenal, but it's Ohio State. The candidates that are going to line up to come be the DC at Ohio State are going to line up. Same thing at offensive coordinator. I think they'll be fine. That's why I'm just not worried about any of this as far as that goes. But we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, and Adam, I'll flip it. Are you worried about this, Adam? Are you worried about this? So Chip Kelly coming back to Ohio State, I mean, that's a natural replacement of Brian Hartline. That makes sense. However, I'm looking at Penn State, and I'm like, I don't know what their plan is. They either have a plan and they're sitting back, like everyone's just ripping them, saying, my gosh, this has been a disaster. They fired James Franklin. He was the first big domino to fall that led to all these other programs pulling the plug on their head coach, not even at the halfway point of the season. Right? And so that happened, and it's like they did that so they can get a jump start on everybody else on the coaching search. So I think a couple things have happened. They got a jump start. They know who they want, and who they want is still coaching or on a coaching staff on any of these teams that are still in this playoff conversation. And that's why Penn State's sitting back and just being quiet. And once the fate of this particular candidate's team has been served, then they'll jump and pounce and they'll announce it to the world. Or they really just don't have a clue. I would like to give Penn State a little bit more credit than that. I would like to think that they have a plan. Some believe it's Kellen DeBoer. I'd be amazed at that, but some believe that that's the case. If it truly is that they don't have a plan and that all the efforts that they've made, all the coaches that they've reached out to have declined them, I think the next phase of guys that they really have to look at, can you imagine Ed Orgeron at Penn State? It sounds like he's going to Tulane, by the way, unless it's been announced and I've missed it, but Ed O could be at Tulane. You imagine Ed O in Penn State? Go Lions. Chip Kelly at Penn State. If I'm Penn State, I try to get Chip Kelly to be my head coach. Proven winner at the college level as a head coach. Proven winner, national champion as a coordinator. Yeah, I agree, Adam. Tulane needs Ed O. Penn State doesn't need Ed Orgeron. Tulane needs Ed O. I think that would be a home run hire for them, no doubt. But I think if you're Penn State, I think you have to try to get a Chip Kelly or a Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly was never going to succeed at LSU. When he did that weird, creepy little accent thing at that LSU women's basketball game, I was like, oh, man, when you're trying to sell everybody that you belong there from the beginning, and said, like, if you were just yourself there, I'd buy it. But when you were trying to sell people from the beginning that you belong there, you don't belong there. Brian Kelly's a Midwest guy. I think that Penn State would make a lot of sense. I think he would do very, very good at Penn State. I think Brian Kelly would do very well at Penn State, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense. If I'm Penn State, I try to get Brian Kelly. If I'm Penn State, I try to get Chip Kelly. I think that as bad as it is for Penn State, they can come out looking pretty good. I think any of those two coaches, if Penn State can end up with Brian or Chip Kelly, I think they're in pretty good shape. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. We're going to talk Reds coming up in the next hour. In fact, let's jump into the Reds. We're going to talk Reds when we come back. The Reds are in on Kyle Shwarber. But are they playing? Is this an act? Are they just pretending to be in on Kyle Shwarber so that when Kyle Shwarber picks another team, the Reds could say, hey, guys, sorry, fans, we tried. I shared this story earlier in the program, but we had Ron Harper come in not too long ago, about a year ago, and he sat in studio and he shared the story of why he couldn't stand Dayton. He couldn't stand the Flyers because he was so ticked off that they didn't really try to recruit him. And he was really mad that they didn't give him an offer. And when it was known that Ron Harper was going to commit to Miami of Ohio, that, when that time came, all of a sudden, Don Donaher and company, they kind of got a little squirrely and they said, hey, man, we can't, when it came out that he was going to announce his decision, the Flyers, because they have always been very PR centric, they can't look bad in front of anybody, right? They're still like that today. They planned a trip to Ron Harper's house, and Ron Harper said he was so angry about it because he knew they weren't actually there to legitimately recruit him. They were there to cover their own ass. They were there to cover their ass because when it was time to announce, that he had committed to Miami, that they could at least look back at their fan base and say, "Hey guys, we tried. In fact, we were there on the day before he announced Don Donaher. We were in his living room." And he said he was furious about that because he didn't like being worked. I thought it was a heck of an interview. I thought it was a hell of a story that he was really bothered by Don Donaher and company because how dare they not even try to really recruit him throughout his entire recruiting process. And then when it was about to come out that he was going to announce Miami of Ohio the next day, they only took the time to make a trip to his house to save face. And he was beyond ticked by that. So he said he couldn't wait for that first time he got to play Dayton, and he went and he just absolutely obliterated them. He hated Dayton for that very reason. He didn't like being worked. He said his mom had to threaten him to be nice when Coach Donaher and company came over, but he was adamant he wanted nothing to do with them. And I thought about that. I'm like, yeah, that happens in recruiting a lot. That happens at the biggest of schools to the smallest of schools. And I feel like that's what the Reds are doing to us. The Reds are making sure that they're having the right amount of conversation with the agents of Kyle Shwarber. They're going to show just enough interest to get the attention of national media. And when the national media catches a hold of this, like Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, like ESPN's Jeff Passan, then they're going to put it out there. Man, the Reds have a legit shot to get Kyle Shwarber. Look at them. They're thoroughly entertaining this. They are trying to find a way to get it done. Do the Reds actually plan to find a way to get it done? Or are they just doing this like what Dayton did with Ron Harper to save face so that when ultimately the Phillies get an extension done with him, when ultimately the Mets overspend to get him, or ultimately when he ends up a Boston Red Sox player, that the Reds could look at their fan base and say, well, hey, look at this Jeff Passan article. We were close. Hey, I know you guys are bummed, and we're looking forward to seeing you at Reds Fest. By golly, we were so close to getting a slugger in this lineup. By golly, we were so close. Don't be mad at us. We tried. I hope that's not what's happening here. I hope that's not what's happening here. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.